what is divine rights of king. So, panoorin po natin.
So in one of the Put It on the Table videos, Justin and I talked about the divine right of kings. Since a couple of you asked me what that was, I thought I'd briefly explain it here. So the divine right of kings, also known simply as the divine right or God's mandate, is a political theory that the king's authority comes directly from God, not from the king's subjects. This idea first stems from the book of 1 Samuel in the Old Testament, where the prophet Samuel anoints Saul to be king over Israel. Because he was anointed and chosen by God, even when Saul had clearly got fairly drunk with power and was trying to kill him, David would not lay a hand on him. After all, he was chosen by God. An Irish monk named Evelyn, which is not said like it is spelled at all, proposed in about 700 AD that this applied to all monarchs. All monarchs were instituted by God, and then violating against the monarch was violating against God. And so rebellion or treason became the most heinous of crimes. This idea just sort of became what everybody accepted for rebellion. So what's the deal? When Justin and I were talking, we concluded that definitely wasn't the way things were. But that part with Samuel definitely happened. And the apostles wrote about all authority from God. Technically, kings did and do get authority from God. So does your mayor. And we don't talk about the divine right of mayors, because that would be ridiculous. Mayors aren't infallible. Neither were kings. The authority came and comes from God, and we therefore must offer ourselves in submission to that authority. In most cases, God picked them the same way he picked Saul, and if Saul wasn't immune from criticism, then they weren't and aren't. That said, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod holds that power is vested in the people who must consent to being ruled. The Israelites, after all, asked for a king in order to get Saul. In other words, the kings didn't have the right just because God gave it simply. Whatever form of government people have in place is given authority from God. Godcation of kingship, he is the source. In simple terms, the divine right of kings was the concept that kings got to rule forever because God made it one time. Today, we suggest instead that God grants authority to any government because all authority comes from God. It's, not just a monarchy thing. You don't have to be king. It's not like, whatever. Monarchy. It doesn't have to be the monarchy. It could be anybody who's in charge.
So, yun, nakita ang ibig sabihin ng divine right of kings. So, in Korean history, yung divine right kings, it is a political doctrine daw in defense of monarchical absolutism, which asserted na yung mga hari ay nagmula sa pakikipag-isa nila sa Diyos at hindi maaaring managot sa kanilang mga actions by any earthly authority such as a parliament. So yun po yung nila, yung paniniwala nila. So thus the Bible support the divine rights of kings. Divine right kings is scriptural. Tama po ba? So correct me kung kung mali po yung mga yung pagkakaintindi ko po dito. Divine right kings is scriptural, for we can find it in scriptures. So subalit hindi ito yung dispensational. Kumbaga, we cannot find it in our dispensation of grace. Kasi nga sabi sa Revelation 19 verse 16, Jesus Christ is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So bakit nga? Because He will be over all kings and all lords. England's problem with religious dissent continued and became complicated because of political ambition. Until naman now, ito rin yung nagiging problem. They are desiring for a higher office to run. So, mas lalo ngayon, problem din ng ating bansa. So, dahil sa paghangad nila na mas mataas yung position or para lang sumikat, para lang makita ng mga tao na magkaroon ng maraming pera. So, nagis nila ang kanilang sarili. Kaya yung mga ibang church ngayon, nagagamit sa politics. Mas lalo nilang dinudungisan ang pangalan ng Diyos dahil sa ginagamit nila ang pangalan ng Diyos para gumawa ng mali, harapan ng tao. Kaya Kaya marami tuloy ngayon na hindi na naniniwala, hindi naniniwala sa Diyos, hindi na maintindihan kung sino ang Diyos. Kaya marami nang matigas ang puso. Kaya kapag nag-share ang totoong Kristiyano sa kanila, hindi nila pinaniniwalaan dahil sa mga nangyayari din sa mga iba't ibang church. Ito po yung picture ng sa political ambition. So next, yung Stuart King. So sabi dito, the Stuart Kings, James the First 1603 to 25, Charles the First 1625 to 1649 tried to return the Church of England, or tinatawag na Anglican, to its Catholic roots, both theological and practical. So ano ba tong ibig sabihin ng Stuart na to? So yung Stuart ay yung Stuart na to were the first kings of the United Kingdom. Si King James VI ng Scotland ay naging hari na si King James the First ng England. Kaya pinagsama yung dalawang trono sa kauna-unahang pagkakataon. The Stuart dynasty reigned in England and Scotland from 1603 to 1714, a period which saw a flourishing court culture but also much upheaval and instability of plague, fire, and war. So ngayon naman tignan natin yung Stuart Kings. Unahin na po natin si James the First noong 1603 to 1625. He believed in the divine right of kings. He pervade any interpretation of church doctrine, different priesthood, and made Sunday church going compulsory. He was a strong advocate of royal absolutism, and his conflict with an increasingly self-assertive parliament set the stage for the rebellion against his successor. So yun po, si James ay naniniwala siya na siya lamang yung may pananagutan sa Diyos at hindi maaaring subukin ng anumang korte. So kaya naman siya yung hindi niya pinayagan ang mga Catholic na ipagdiwang yung mass at tumanggi siyang makinig ng mga hinihingi ng mga Puritans para sa reform ng church. Sa halip na pinahintulutan niya yung paggamit ng King James Bible na meron pa rin hanggang ngayon. So ipinakilala rin ni James na ang mga English Protestant at yung Ireland sa Northern Ireland sa pamamagitan ng scheme ng Ulster Plantation, at sinubukan niya na panatilihing mapayapa yung England sa mga natitirang Europe. So bagaman siya isang matalino na tao, ang kanyang pinili na favorite ay pinalayo sa parliament at hindi niya nalutas yung problemang pangpinasyal o pangpolitikal para sa bansa. Kaya nung namatay siya noong 1625, ang kanyang bansa na pinamunuan ay naging masama dahil sa utang, dahil sa hindi niya nasolusyonan ng maayos yung pinansyal ng bansa. So yung pangalawa naman na Stuart King ay si Charles the First noong 1625. Ito yung pumalit kay James hanggang sa 1649 sa kanyang pamumuno. Si Charles was the King of England, Scotland, and Ireland from 27 of March 1625 until his execution in 1649. He was born into the house of the Stuart as the second son of the King James the Sixth of Scotland, but after his father inherited the English throne in 1603 as James I, he moved to England where he spent much of the rest of his life. Si Charles I, tatay niya si James. So pagkatapos ng pagkamatay niyang ama, hindi niya ibinahagi yung pagmamahal ng kanyang ama sa kapayapaan at nagsimula siya ng digmaan sa Spain at pagkatapos ay sa France naman upang labanan yung gerang ito, kailangan niya ng parliament upang bigyan siya ng pera. So, ganun. Gayunpaman, hindi natuwa yung parliament sa kanyang napiling nawa, lalo na ang Duke ng Buckingham at pinahirapan ng mga bagay para sa kanya. So, noong 1629, tinanggal niya ang parliament at nagpa siyang mamuno ng mag-isa na taong 11 na taon. Tulad din ng kanyang ama, naniniwala din siya sa divine right kings. Sa ilalim ng kanyang nasasakupan, pinasuko niya yung nasasakupan Scottish na marami sa kanila ay mga Puritans sa pamamagitan ng pag-iit na sumusunod sila sa parehong relihiyon sa kanyang mga asignaturang Ingles. So, ay ang dalawa niyang digmaang bishop. So, yung estado sa panlalapin ni Charles ay mas lumala yung problema na inawanan ng kanyang ama sa isang antas na wala siyang pagpipilian kundi ang gunitain ang isang parliament na ang pagkundina sa kanyang estilo ng pamamahala ay hahantong sa bansa sa digmaang sibil at si Charles I sa kanyang pagpapatupad noong 1649. Kaya yun ang nangyari. Finally, after many years of struggles, Oliver Cromwell as leader of the English Parliament lead a revolt of Protestants and execute King Charles I in 1649. So tignan naman natin kung sino si Oliver Cromwell. Ito po si Oliver Cromwell, leader of English Parliament. He is a political and military leader in 17th century England who served as Lord Protector. Kilala si Cromwell sa pagiging walang awa sa labanan at 2 beses niyang pinangunahan yung na magtagumpay sila sa kanilang pagsisikap na alisin ang British monarch mula sa kapangyarihan. So tinawag siya na diktador ng ilan kasama ang hinaharap na punong ministro ng Brittany na si Winston Churchill. Si Cromwell ay isang taimtim na Puritan. Particular na hindi nagpapaubaya sa mga Katoliko at Quaker. Kahit na siya ay kinredito din ng iba sa pagtulong ng pamunuan ng Great Britain patungo sa isang pamahalang constitutional. A period of relative calm was enjoyed by England, but Protestantism continued to fragrant. So its denominations included Lutherans, Reformed, Radical, Anglicanism, and Puritanism. Good enlightened Englishmen affirmed the Anglican faith and attended the churches regularly. Nonconformists such as the Puritans, Congregationalists, and Baptists were fined, exiled, imprisoned, and in some cases put to death. Kaya naghangad si Cromwell na itulak ang katawan ng pambatasan na tumawag para sa mga bagong halalan at magtatag ng isang nagkakaisang gobyerno sa England, Scotland at Ireland. So pagkatapos noon, muling winasak ni Cromwell ang parliament noong 1655 nang masimulan yung dibitasyon katawan ng pagtatalo sa mga reform constitutional.